A few years ago, I reviewed the book series, A Series of Unfortunate Events. And little did I know, but that exact same year debuted the first season of the Netflix series of the same name. And there were a few people that were all like, hey, you need to review this. And I thought to myself, I'm going to review this after all of the seasons have aired, all the stories have been adapted. And so now, here we are in 2019, and all 13 books of Daniel Handler's A Series of Unfortunate Events have been adapted for Netflix viewing. And I've got to say, I'm decently impressed with how it turned out. So, today, in this video, we are going to review the entirety of Netflix's A Series of Unfortunate Events in no particular order. I'm going to start with the negatives first, just so we can leave this video on a more positive note. One of the smaller things that I really didn't feel worked in this show, really, the special effects until the third season seemed kind of almost cheap. I never really liked the way that they portrayed Sunny doing her biting thing from the back, from a camera angle in the back, and then like really fast chewing. I always thought that just looked kind of yuck. There's a really, really bad scene. I think it's at the end of... Yeah, it is at the end of The Miserable Mill Part 2, where, like, the Sunny is, like, a CGI baby, and there's fire, and it looks really almost terrible. Even in Season 3, when, like, they got a bit of a bigger budget, I really wasn't impressed with all the special effects. There's a scene in The Slippery Slope Part 2 where there are a bunch of eagles and they look about on par as the birdemic birds. Yeah. Another thing I sometimes didn't like was the editing, or even some of the camera work sometimes. It was very, very basic, and considering the directors that they had working on this project seems just so odd to me. They had the likes of Barry Sonnenfeld and Bo Welch, and I'm just like, why do we sometimes get such lackluster shots? One of my other main qualms, and this stems over from the books too, is usually whenever any of the Baudelaires talked, it seemed like their dialogue was like too perfect to be true. And when you say that dialogue aloud, it sounds really kind of stilted and like not very realistic. The bad thing is the writers, specifically Daniel Handler, because he penned a lot of the scripts, used their dialogue, the Baudelaire's dialogue, almost verbatim. And it makes the kids, I don't know whether or not the kids are just like early in their acting careers or what, but their line delivery along with the lines themselves made their delivery very flat. This got better in Season 3, but like in Season 1 especially, it was sometimes insufferable. And that wasn't just a kid thing either. There were a lot of the adult actors too who were saying a lot of these like really fast lines where they were getting out a lot of information or like telling a joke, and they just came off as so boring. They just came off as like bored with saying their lines, except for Max Greenfield in Season 3. He was one of them where I thought the deadpan delivery really worked. This series owes a lot more than some people give it credit for, to its 2004 predecessor. Neil Patrick Harris's portrayal of Count Olaf, while totally still his own, owes a lot to Jim Carrey's Count Olaf, and the fact that they are just both laughable buffoons. You know that scene in the 2004 version where Jim Carrey is walking around as a dinosaur? If you extend that over a series of 25 episodes, then it can be hit or miss sometimes. But that's not to say all the comedy in this show doesn't fall flat. There are a lot of like really cool one-liners, especially from the hench people. I really like the twin ladies. There's I think it's in the Wide Window Part 2. One of them's just like, "Land ho!" and the other one says, "I told you to stop calling me that." And I died. Speaking of the 2004 movie, that film definitely had a pacing problem in that they didn't take time to develop any of the book's stories, so it went too fast. But in the Netflix series version, sometimes things go too slow. Like, I get we have a commissioned number of episodes we need to get out per season, but splitting up all of the books, except the last one, into 2 episodes really killed me sometimes. And since we already had an adaptation of the first 3 books, the first 6 episodes of this show were a slog to get through because you already knew what was going to happen. And even though the Netflix series is a lot more faithful to the books, sometimes the books weren't all that exciting. Now, don't get me wrong, I totally appreciate the fidelity to the source material, but stretching a book that's less than 200 pages in length to almost a 90-minute running time is ridiculous. Personally, this is what I think they should have done. They should have had 1 season, and they should have adapted 1 book per episode, and don't regulate how long the episode length is. You adapt all the material that you need to in order to keep the story going, but you only have 1 book fit in per episode. Here's the downside to that. That would have made this show ungodly expensive to produce. One of the good things about this show, I guess in terms, if you're thinking about it from like a backstage producer point of view, is that if you're covering 2 episodes of the same book, that's less sets you have to build for that season, because you can reuse the sets in the second half. And so really, instead of building sets for 13 different locations, you just need to build 4 different sets of sets to cover 8 episodes if you're covering 4 books. And speaking of the sets, this is a good thing. The sets are amazing. Not that any of them ever looked hyper-realistic, but boy, with the attention to detail and just the sheer beauty, the atmosphere was there. Like when you're in Count Olaf's house, it feels gross and claustrophobic, and where the series ends on an island, you feel like you're on an island, not only because of the beautiful sets, and also the beautiful costume design. Mwah, good for them. Mwah. The sheer amount of atmosphere they put into just all of the backgrounds is cool. And again, if you had filmed all of those together in the same season, I wouldn't even want to look at the budget for that. I want to commend this series for remaining ridiculously loyal to the source material. Where are all of these VFD references coming from? They weren't in the first 4 books. And when I was watching the Dom's review of the first season of A Series of Unfortunate Events, he proposed a very interesting thought. Namely, that Daniel Handler was rewriting his books how he wanted to structure them originally before he got the VFD stuff going in book 5. And so dropping references in stories 1 through 4 would have been the goal if that had been his goal the whole time, which, if you read the books, kind of isn't. I guess I'm calling it an improvement in the overall arc for the storytelling. Is it better or worse than what we would have gotten anyway? I don't know. I guess that's kind of up for you to decide. Hands down, the best. There are 2 really good episodes in this whole series. And the first one is from season 2, The Hostile Hospital, episodes 1 and 2. I count all these episodes as kind of like movies. So I don't really count them as like a part 1 and a part 2. I count them as like a whole. And so The Hostile Hospital is a masterpiece of suspense, as much as a masterpiece as an episode of A Series of Unfortunate Events could be. I was like actually horrified when Esme was like looking for the kids in when Esme was looking for the kids in the secretary's office. That scene was just so well done, and the whole last half of the episode where they're trying to find Violet, and Klaus and Sunny dressing up as a doctor and like meeting up with Olaf was perfect. And that is a testament to Lewis Hines, however you pronounce his last name. That is a testament to Lewis Hines' acting. Honestly, I think out of the main 3, he was probably the best one. The character beats for the main 3 Baudelaires remain the same as from what they were in the books, but the one main change they made for the show that I think is for the better is giving Count Olaf an arc. We spend almost just as much time, if not more time, with Olaf per episode, when really, in some episodes, part of the mystery was not knowing where he was and what he was doing. That happened in The Hostile Hospital. But we saw Olaf's plan the whole time. But what got really interesting is watching Olaf's interactions with his hench people. The fact that his hench people by season 3 are so fed up that Olaf is not succeeding that they all decide to leave is kind of cool. They realize that if they're going to get anywhere in life, they can't follow someone who is aimlessly trying to capture these children and not succeeding ever. And then in season 3, there's this backstory about the whole sugar bowl nonsense that makes the sugar bowl slightly less useless than it was in the book series. I'm not going to spoil it, but there's some really nice character development for all of the adults pre-schism of the VFD. The other really good episode was the end, the last episode of the show. This is the only episode that is not counted as a two-parter because it's only an hour-length episode. And honestly, I think that is a testament to what I think my idea of having one book per episode could have been. That was the only episode of the show to me that never felt like it totally dragged. There was not a moment where I'm just like, checking my watch, going on to another app or whatever. I was totally engrossed the whole time. It's also really good because as much of a downer as the book was, the episode doesn't, it flips it on its head. It still follows the beats, it still follows the story beat for beat, but there are some things that they tack onto the ending that make it just a little more satisfying. They answer those questions that you were wondering at the end of the book and fill in the gaps in the script. Overall, I would say this show is slightly more sophisticated than a lot of children's television programming on right now, or any program on right now, actually. It's also better looking, and while not altogether better acted, it does present some very thought-provoking details. What can we consider good and bad? And can you justify the bad things that you do as good things if you were stopping another bad thing from happening? One thing I've always really liked about this series is how, at least in the last couple books, it discusses the interconnectedness of everybody's stories and how your story is only a small part of a grander scheme of things. And if you only have an understanding of what makes your story tick, then your view of the world is minuscule if yours is the only one that you care about. Because while you might be the main character in your story, you are still the background character in somebody else's. Wow, that sounded so much like a chorus line. All right, we're off to a good start here in 2019. So this is Dustin signing off, but only for now.